supportive there.
Sorry about
You
that.
guys, you have all been such tremendous supporters of Lakewood schools and our students over the years, and I just want to know that we all recognize that over in Lakewood and appreciate that. And it's been a couple years since I've been to your meetings, but I've been to a few of your meetings, and it seems like a long time ago. But I'm glad to be back and seeing all of you here, your smiling faces and looking so healthy after these last tough years. So thank you again for all that you do for Lakewood. And I also want to say I appreciate this because our communities of Lakewood and Arlington and Marysville community, Lakewood being in the middle, we all kind of share a common experience here in the North County. And so many of us have families either in Arlington, Lakewood, and around. So you may not live in Lakewood, but you may have grandchildren or relatives in Lakewood or have businesses in Lakewood and Smoky Point. So again, I appreciate the opportunity to be here today to talk to you about our renewal levy for technology and facilities improvements. We've had a tough time the last few years in Lakewood. I mean, like everyone, we've been enduring the pandemic, but we also had a double levy failure in 2020 with our operations levy, which meant we didn't have local funding for a year. So we had to navigate the challenges of that. And in the midst of that, we did get technology levy approved. So what I'm here to talk to you about is a renewal of that technology levy and actually a reinstatement of the facilities portion of that levy. Back in 2020, when we were in the midst of the pandemic and our community was suffering and there was a lot of economic hardship, our school board, we had previously a technology and facilities levy. So it paid for computers and it paid for improvements to our school buildings. But in 2020, the school board decided in the spring that due to the hardship, we needed to scale that levy ask to our community back a bit and just focus on giving our local taxpayers a break for the next couple of years and to focus on technology only because we knew we were going to need that during the pandemic with kids in remote learning. And so the school board did that, scaled back at that point to just a technology levy for 2 years. Now, believe it or not, time has flown by and here we are approaching the end of that 2-year stretch and the levy is expiring at the end of this year. So this levy that's on the ballot on April 26th is a renewal for technology and facilities improvements. So it continues the funding for our Chromebook program and our online programs. And I'll talk a little bit more detail about that in a minute. But it funds the technology piece and reinstates facilities improvements and updates that we deferred for 2 years. And you guys all know how it's like when you're trying to maintain a home. You defer things, it doesn't get any cheaper, it doesn't get any easier to do it later. Things just get worse. They don't heal themselves. And so we're back to that place where we've said we really need to go back and reinstate those priorities in terms of improving our buildings for our kids and our staff. So it restores that funding in this proposition. What I like to do is make sure people know exactly what we're asking for and explain what this looks like on the ballot. You can see right here, it's a 4-year levy. So we're going from a 2-year levy back to 4 years because we want to maintain that stability for our taxpayers. You can look at this. Taxpayers can look at this and see exactly what we're asking for over 4 years. On the far right-hand side, and many of you have seen these kinds of presentations before, probably could teach me a few things, but on the far right-hand side is what we're actually asking voters to approve on the ballot. $835,000 in 2023, $905,000 in 24, $990 in 25, and 1.08 in 2026. When voters approve those amounts or are asked to approve those amounts, we can't collect any more than that over a period of 4 years. That's the maximum amount that Lakewood School District can collect once voters have approved that amount. And I'll talk a little bit about the relationship of property values in just a minute, very briefly, but that's what we're asking voters to approve. And this middle column here is what we're estimating it will cost people for $1,000 of assessed property value. So people can look at this and say, all right, well, my house is worth $500,000, which is the average price in Lakewood School District. So it's going to cost us $110 a year to pay this tax. So you can figure it out ahead of time. You know what it will cost. This is not on top of what taxpayers are already paying. it's replacing what taxpayers are already paying for the technology levy, but we're collecting just a little more because of the facilities piece. So it's $110,000 a year, or 4.4 cents per student. Just to illustrate how spreading that responsibility around all the taxpayers, how we can take care of our kids the most affordable way. So one of the things I hear, and I try to address some of these questions when I talk to groups, and this is true of every school district. So some of this is very generalizable, whether you're in Arlington or Lakewood or Marysville or any district. When property values go up, schools do not get to collect more money. So when I shared with you those amounts on the right-hand column, those amounts, that's the amount the county collects for us regardless of what happens with property values. We can't collect a penny more. So what happens in that case is if property values across the district in total go up, then the levy rate goes down. It's like having a pie divided up into a number of pieces. When when the property values go up, it creates more pieces in the pie and the burden gets shared across the district in a more broad way. One of the things that we do in Lakewood, and a lot of districts have shifted to doing this over the last few years, we really itemize everything that our levy is going to pay for. So you taxpayers can see exactly what we're going to use the money for. So I've got a list here. Hopefully you can see it in the back, but we're going to be purchasing and maintaining 2,000 student devices through 2026. So we'll be buying 2,000 devices. I put maintaining in there because we're going to be replacing ones that are at the end of life, who are just on a cycle. We know how many there are. Like at the end of 5 years, this is how many computers are going to die. So we got to replace them. And then how many new kids are coming to our district. We plan for enrollment increases. So when you add all those needs together, that's 2,000 devices through 2026 to keep a one-to-one ratio for computers to kids. Purchase and maintenance of 200 staff devices. We know, again, like the laptops, we're going to have to replace some that are at the end of life. And then we know we're going to have to add some more when we can get more kids and more staff. Technology licensing, we've got all kinds of platforms we use, like Clever, kids get into it to access their online courses. We've got Skyward, we've got Microsoft, all of Microsoft suite. We have our online alternative program, Edgenuity program. It's all paid for with the levy. We have our access points that need to be updated and expanded across the district, wireless access points. Phone upgrade, we actually have an analog system yet. It's a little antiquated. We got to get it up to the digital. We're going to get into the digital age on phones so we can enhance that system and improve communication with families. Technology infrastructure, we're all thinking about online security right now, what's going on in Europe, and this is part of that. Making sure we have firewalls, data storage, servers that are all up to date and secure. That's also part of the priority that's paid for by the levy. You can see the dollar amounts that we've budgeted for each of those things. And then finally, just managing technology systems. We have 2 people, believe it or not, for the whole district, 5 schools, and 2 people do all the technology support. I can't imagine doing that, but they do a fantastic job, and this pays for part of their salaries. On the facilities side, this is the new part that we're adding back in. The needs aren't new, but the list on this ballot measure is. Fire control alarm systems at a couple of our schools, English Crossing and Lakewood Middle School. They need to be updated. Boiler replacement at Lakewood Elementary School is 30, 40 years old. We all know what furnaces get to the end of their life, and this is definitely there. Roof replacement, we've got leaks at LES and LMS we've been repairing the last few years. The middle school and the elementary school, we need to update, get that fixed permanently. We got repairs and sidewalks and curbs that have to be taken care of. We've got a waterproof coating that's got to be replaced on our stadium platforms. It's leaking down underneath into the locker rooms in the stadium. Some carpets to be replaced at 2 of our schools, English Crossing and Cougar Creek. Vehicular gate at Lakewood Elementary School. We've got parties on the weekends up behind that school. So people are leaving bottles and cans and other things out there in back of the school, and we got to shut that down. So we're going to put in a vehicular gate. Hopefully, all the other schools have it. That's the only one that doesn't. That's some fencing to put in, enhance security. Additional classroom space. We're anticipating needing to add a couple more classrooms over the next 4 years. We're going to have, I think, about 1,600 new homes built in Lakewood over the next 5 years or so. And so we're going to have more kids. We know we are. And then we just got contingency funding, and that's for 4 years, $244,000 in case, you know, things come up. You got to address them right away. That's not actually a lot of money for 4 years, but it's, you know, it's what we think we need. We're taking care of a lot of stuff with this list. But we just think it's important to be very transparent about what we're doing with people's money. Current levy, technology only, but going back to the original version of this levy, we bought box light interactive panels in the classroom. So you can see one of our teachers using that. We've got document cameras, so our teachers can put books and documents up in front of the kids. Classroom computers, you can see a little hard drive there. And then you can see one of the, we call them cows, computers on wheels. You know, you get the classroom set of computers there in a cart, and then we've got Sonny, one of our tech guys, who's also paid for by the levy in part. So he's maintaining those in that picture. The other thing I think that's important to be clear about, I think it's really important, is last year we did a community survey in Lakewood. We asked our voters what was most important. So it was really, we did this in January. What we found was 78% of our voters said that enhancing vocational programs and really providing the STEM type experiences, the robotics, engineering, technology, the math, all of that this was one of the highest priorities on the survey. 78% of the people surveyed said this was important. Well, this aligns with the technology levy. We can't do any of this stuff without having the equipment and the programs necessary to fulfill this commitment. So this was one priority that was super important. So we think this lines up pretty well. The second priority, one of the other high priorities was enhancing, maintaining our facilities, just making sure we're keeping up with repairs. You guys all know about our new high school. It's a great school. We put in a new STEM lab. We have an open house next week actually for that, because under COVID, it opened and we couldn't really open it to the public and gather people around. But we're going to celebrate that next Thursday. We had a STEM lab. We're putting in a new transportation facilities addition in one of our buildings so we can better maintain our schools. So this just means if we're putting in all these new facilities, we need to maintain it. It's an investment the community's made. We have that obligation to maintain it. So just I'm just going to run through these pictures really quickly, but they just give you an idea of what I'm talking about. Safety fencing around our playgrounds. Probably should have had a picture of kids sitting with coats or something in winter, but that's a picture of a furnace there. One of our furnaces has got to be replaced. The roof that we just leaked at the middle school, just fixed at the middle school that leaked over the holidays, and there's the leak, the water that was in Cougar Hall. We got our stadium, those platforms. If you remember the football games, there's two platforms one on each end of the stadium, and the water just runs down into the building from there. We've got to get that taken care of. You can see what the impact of that is in the locker room. There's a big puddle there and some damage into the ceiling and the rafters. Vehicle gate at LAS, right up where the bus turnaround is. Carpet at Cougar Creek. County's recommended we replace that. Fire control panel, it's a big deal. It's a big system, expensive, but important. And then we've got our phone system. Teaching and learning secretary, Sophia, there on her phone. Probably talking to her husband, Paul Deep, who's the technology director. We got breaking down curbs and sidewalks. Those need to be replaced. You know, the computers the kids are using, there's 2,000 computers. All of our online systems are Wi-Fi. You can see the app or the WAP there that's on the ceiling. And then servers that need to be replaced across the district. The last part I want to touch on here that I get questions about, and I really want to be clear about this too, I think it's super important. People ask, why don't you just use the federal money that you got from ESSER funds, ESSER 1, 2, and 3. You got, in this case, the ESSER 3, I'm just highlighting that one because this is similar to the other two. We got a lot more money for ESSER 3. We got $1.8 million in Lakewood for ESSER 3. That's a lot of money. problem with that is we can't use that for just anything. So ESSER money, a lot of flexibility on that, but it had to be used for things, needs that were created as a result of the pandemic. We couldn't use it to replace funding for something else that we would normally. I mean, if we had our 500 computers, for example, that are on a replacement cycle and they're due to be replaced this year, we can't use the money for that because it's already identified as a need before the pandemic even hit. So we can't do that. The auditors would not like that. They would not be nice to us if that was the case. So we have to use this for things that were needs created by the pandemic. And here are things that we did. One of the things we did in Lakewood, I was super proud of, was we added quarantine room staffing for every school. So we had a nurse and a quarantine room staff member, an assistant to the nurse in every school. We had actually a couple extra at one point, which meant we could do all the testing we wanted to do. We could do all the contact tracing we needed to do. It was still a lot, but we did it, and then we could do test to stay. We were one of the few districts in the county that could do the test to stay program to keep kids in school throughout the pandemic, or at least when we started coming back. So that was huge because that kept kids in school, kept them from falling behind. You know, the other stuff, sanitation supplies, we've been talking about these things for a couple of years. Health supplies, you know, we added staff, we added furniture and equipment to improve social distancing, make sure kids were in school. At one point, we added kindergarten teachers so that we could bring kids back earlier for social distancing reasons, because we really just wanted to get kids in school safely. So this money helped us to do that. But what I didn't talk about that's huge now is we've got academic well-being and recovery programs to undertake. We've got 2 years of work to do with kids who are in remote learning for, in our case, it was about a year. We came back in April of last year, but they were out about a year. So we've got after school programs, summer school programs that we're going to be putting in place. And what we're really doing in Lakewood, and I'm excited about this, is we're not just fixing kids. I mean, we can come in and say, you're behind in this and you're behind in that. And this is what's wrong with you. We're not doing that. We're coming in and saying, what are you ready for? What are you ready for? Where can you grow as a student? Because parents were teaching kids, and they may not have been teaching what we would have taught, but kids were learning while they were out. So we need to understand that people are coming from very different experiences during the pandemic. Some educationally were better than others, no question. But what we're trying to do is think about how do we create a summer school program that's highly interest-based, it's highly experiential with skill building at the center of that. So the kids are excited to come in so that when they leave at the end of that morning, they're at summer school, they go home and they're talking to their parents at lunch about what they did. We want that. We want people to set kids to say, I want to come in and do the orienteering course, you know, at summer school, and then really work on their math in the middle of that experience. So we're really thinking about what that looks like, because we think that will actually help us to grow as an entire district moving forward in the future. So, you know, trying to find, with all the challenges of the last couple of years, the positives that we can build on. So questions that you have. Yeah.
So help us understand where the boundary line is between Arlington schools and Lakewood schools.
Right.
I know part of at least the west side of Smoky Point Boulevard, like where the senior center is.
The boundary is right, the clearest one is right there on this side of the LDS church. 43rd right there is the boundary between 43rd. 43rd. I can't remember the road.
So is any of the opportunity zone and the new construction, like the Amazon building, is that going to help your situation?
That doesn't help. That's you're one street away. Can you imagine? But we are getting a lot of new construction in Lakewood, and that's going to be huge. We are getting new construction in homes. There's a number of very large developments coming in Lakewood over the next 4 to 5 years. That's going to help their residential construction, but they're definitely going to help a lot.
But the area where Costco is and all that area is in Lakewood School District.
That's in Lakewood School District, yes. Yep. Yep. Absolutely.
So when you say the new development's going to help,
Jim.
oh, thank you. So when you say the new development's going to help, you have growth impact fees on all the.
Yes, we do. We're reevaluating those right now.
Excellent.
Looking at what that needs to be in the future.
This might sound like a silly question, but why do you do them for such short periods of time? Because we're, they're doing them in standard right now too, and people are all like, this is the new tax, this is the new tax, and obviously, no matter how many times people say, no, this is renewal,
Right.
they still think it's a new tax. So is there a reason, is that statutory that you can only do it?
We can only do a capital levy, which is what this is, because it's building things or improving technology. You can only do those for a maximum of 6 years. And for an operations levy, like the EP&O levies that we run, we can only run those for a maximum of 4. So people tend to do kind of somewhere in the middle, depending on what the local community can accept. That's a great question.
All right, good job.
All right, thank you very much.